Hey everyone and welcome. Today we're cracking open 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. Get ready because we're about to get into the nitty-gritty of building a startup that truly makes a dent in the universe.
You know what always strikes me about Teal is how he cuts right to the chase. He doesn't sugarcoat it.
Yeah, he comes out swinging. Right off the bat, he's like, stop imitating, stop relying on luck, and for goodness sake, stop churning out the same old stuff everyone else is doing.
It's like he's trying to shake us out of our comfort zones.
Totally. He wants us to break free from that horizontal progress trap, like just making things a little bit better than they were before.
Right, he wants us to go for those vertical leaps,
Correct.
creating something totally new that changes the game. Think the invention of the smartphone, not just like releasing a new model with a slightly better camera.
Exactly. Going from 0 to 1. That's what gets me pumped. Those moments where you can't imagine how things were done before.
And that's where his whole stop relying on luck thing comes in. He has that famous interview question. What important truth do very few people agree with you on?
Oh man, I've heard about that. It's like he wants you to prove you're not afraid to think differently.
Exactly. To see the potential for change where others just see the status quo.
So many successful founders were told their ideas were crazy, right? And look at them now.
It's all about having the guts to go against the grain. Which leads us to another one of Thiel's biggies. Stop with the copycat products. He's all about the power of monopolies.
Okay, I'll be honest. When I first heard that, I was a little thrown off. Aren't monopolies supposed to be like the villains of the business world?
It's a common misconception. Thiel argues that in the right context, monopolies can actually be amazing for innovation.
Really? How so?
Think about it. If you're constantly fighting just to survive in a cutthroat market, how much energy do you really have left to, push the boundaries?
It's like you're so busy just keeping your head above water, you can't even see the horizon.
Exactly. But when you have a clear advantage, when you're not constantly looking over your shoulder, you can really invest in the long game, research, development, those big, risky bets that could lead to breakthroughs.
So you're saying a little breathing room can actually be a good thing for progress?
Thiel would say absolutely. He uses Google as a prime example. Now, you could say their dominance in search isn't great for every single competitor out there.
But for us, the everyday users, Google's size means they can keep making their search engine better and better.
Precisely. That's what Thiel calls a creative monopoly.
They've created something so good, it's become the default. But how do you actually build a creative monopoly? It's got to be more than just being a little bit better than the competition.
Right, you need strategic advantages. Thiel outlines 4 that are crucial for any entrepreneur who's serious about dominating their space.
Okay, I'm all ears, lay it on me.
The first is what he calls technological advantage. And it sounds kind of obvious, but monopolies often win because they're not just slightly better, they're doing something radically different.
It's like trying to compete with Google by just like changing your font or something. Not going to cut it.
Exactly. Thiel would say you need to be aiming for a 10x improvement, not a 10% improvement. That's what creates a real gap between you and everyone else. The second advantage is all about network effects.
Ah, the more the merrier strategy.
Precisely. The value of your product actually increases with each new user you bring on board. Think about social media platforms. If none of your friends are on it, are you really going to stick around?
Good point. Facebook, Instagram, even something like Airbnb, they all thrive on that network effect.
Right. The more people use it, the more valuable it becomes. And that makes it incredibly hard for anyone else to compete. Then you've got economies of scale.
This one makes sense to me. Like, the more you produce, the cheaper each unit becomes, right?
You got it. Thiel uses the example of a bakery. Whether you're baking 10 loaves of bread or 1,000, your rent stays the same. So naturally, the more you bake, the cheaper each loaf becomes.
Which means you can either lower your prices or boost your profits.
Exactly. And then last but not least, you've got strong brands.
Ah, the Apples and Nikes of the world. People don't just buy their products, they buy into an idea, a feeling.
100%. They've cultivated this loyal following that goes beyond just the product itself. And that kind of loyalty is incredibly powerful. It gives you pricing power, it makes you more resilient to competition, and it can even make it easier to expand into new markets.
It's like they've created their own little universe that people want to be a part of.
Exactly. So those are Thiel's 4 key advantages of monopolies. Technological advantage, network effects, economies of scale, and strong brands.
It's like a roadmap to building a business that can go the distance. We might not all be trying to take over the world, but these principles can apply even on a smaller scale.
Absolutely. That's what makes Thiel's thinking so relevant. It's not just for tech giants, it's for anyone who wants to break new ground.
So let's say you have that killer idea, that 0 to 1 moment. How do you actually turn it into something real, something that lasts? Thiel lays out what he calls a blueprint for success, and I'm ready to hear it.
He says you need 5 key things: vision, secrets, persistence, a strong culture, and a killer sales strategy.
Okay, let's break those down. What does Thiel mean by vision? We hear that word thrown around a lot, but what does it really mean in this context?
He's not talking about some vague mission statement. He's talking about having a clear, compelling, and often contrarian view of the future. In Thiel's view, a founder is essentially a visionary. They see what others don't, and they're willing to go for it, even when everyone else thinks they're crazy.
It's about trusting your gut, even when the whole world seems to be telling you you're wrong.
100%. Thiel uses the example of Steve Jobs and Apple. I mean, when the iPod first came out, people thought it was just a niche gadget. But Jobs, he had this vision of a world where people would have their entire music libraries in their pockets.
And he wasn't afraid to go all in on that vision.
Exactly. And look at the impact it had. It revolutionized the music industry and paved the way for, well, pretty much everything we use today.
It's amazing what can happen when you combine a powerful vision with that unwavering belief. All right, so that's vision. What about secrets? What kind of secrets are we talking about here?
Thiel believes there are still secrets out there, things hidden in plain sight. He's not talking about, corporate espionage or anything like that. He's talking about uncovering hidden potential, finding those opportunities that others have overlooked.
It's like finding those blind spots in an industry, those areas where nobody's even thinking to look.
Exactly. It's about approaching problems with fresh eyes and being willing to explore those unconventional paths that others might dismiss as, too risky or too out there.
It reminds me of that Einstein quote. Everyone knows it's impossible until someone comes along who doesn't know and just does it.
Love that quote. Thiel actually talks about Hewlett-Packard as an example. Early on, they were known for their innovation, pushing the boundaries of what was possible in tech.
Right, but then they got comfortable.
Exactly. As they grew, they became more risk-averse, more focused on protecting what they had than on creating something truly new. And they ended up stagnating.
It's a classic tale of disruption, right?
Yeah.
The innovator becomes the incumbent, and then someone else comes along and eats their lunch.
Precisely. So Thiel's point is you need to constantly be on the lookout for those secrets, those opportunities to shake things up. Don't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Okay, so we got the vision. We're on the hunt for those game-changing secrets. But then Thiel hits us with another biggie. Persistence. And let's be real, this whole going from 0 to 1 thing, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
You got that right. Thiel is a firm believer that building a truly successful company takes time.
It's not about those quick wins or chasing the latest trends.
Exactly. It's about having that long-term vision and being willing to stick with it even when things get tough. And trust me, they will get tough.
And who better to learn this from than Thiel himself? I mean, he built PayPal from the ground up. He's been in the trenches.
Oh, absolutely. He even tells this story about the early days of PayPal. He did a valuation of the company, and he realized that most of their projected value was based on profits they wouldn't even see for another 10 years.
Talk about playing the long game.
Right. It's about understanding that real value, it takes time to build. It doesn't happen overnight.
Which means you've got to be incredibly passionate about what you're doing because you're probably not going to see a huge payoff right away.
You said it. That passion is what sustains you through the challenges. Thiel also stresses starting small and expanding strategically. He uses Amazon as an example.
Oh yeah, start with books, conquer the world.
Exactly. Jeff Bezos had this grand vision, but he didn't try to do it all at once. He focused on dominating one area and then expanded from a position of strength.
Love that approach. Okay, we've got vision, secrets, persistence.
Yeah.
But you can't build a billion-dollar company by yourself, right? So that's where the next piece of the puzzle comes in. A strong culture.
So true.
And this is something you hear about all the time in the startup world, but it can be kind of hard to pin down. What does Thiel specifically say about building a team that can actually make this happen?
For Thiel, it's about more than just, hiring a bunch of smart people. It's about finding people who share your core values, who you can trust completely, and yeah, who can handle the inevitable disagreements that come with, building something from the ground up.
It's like you're going to butt heads sometimes. That's just part of the process.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you need a team that can handle that constructively. Thiel actually talks about this early investment he made where the founders, brilliant guys, but they just couldn't stand each other.
Oh, no.
And it totally blew up the company. So yeah, having that strong foundation of trust and mutual respect, it's not just a nice to have, it's essential.
It's make or break. All right, so we've got the vision. We're uncovering those hidden secrets. We're in it for the long haul with a killer team by our side. What's the fifth and final piece of Thiel's startup blueprint?
This one might surprise some people, especially coming from a tech investor, but Thiel is a huge believer in having a rock-solid sales strategy.
Okay, I can see how that might get overlooked, especially if you're like a tech whiz who just wants to code all day.
It happens all the time. People pour their hearts into building an amazing product, and then they're like, okay, now what?
Build it and they will come. Spoiler alert,
Mm-hmm.
they usually don't.
Right. Thiel's point is you can't just assume people will magically find and buy your product no matter how brilliant it is. You need a plan for getting it out there.
You've got hustle.
You got it. He emphasizes understanding your target customer, finding the right distribution channels, and constantly testing and refining your approach. He even talks about how there are different types of sales depending on what you're selling.
Like selling a $10 million software package is a different beast than selling a $10 app.
Exactly. You need a sales strategy that aligns with what you're selling and who you're selling it to. He uses Palantir, his data analytics company, as an example. Their deals are often in the millions, so it's a very high-touch, personalized sales process.
You're not just sending out a mass email blast.
Right. Whereas if you're selling a mass market product, you might focus more on like online ads or social media marketing. The point is there's no one-size-fits-all approach. You have to find what works for you.
Test, iterate, and find that sweet spot. Makes sense. So we've covered a ton of ground here, but Thiel doesn't just want to pump us up with all this go out and conquer energy. He also gives us a dose of reality with the story of the clean tech bubble. What can we learn from that whole experience, even if we're not in the renewable energy space?
It's a good reminder that even with the best of intentions, things can go wrong. Thiel uses that example to illustrate some of the common traps that entrepreneurs fall into.
Like what?
Well, one big one was overestimating how quickly the technology would develop. Just because something is possible in a lab doesn't mean it's ready for prime time. He also talks about how they underestimated the importance of distribution, getting those products into the hands of customers at a price that made sense, and then there's the whole timing aspect.
Right. Sometimes the market just isn't ready.
Exactly. External factors like, the rise of cheap natural gas, the global financial crisis, all those things played a role in the clean tech downturn.
It's a good reminder that we don't operate in a vacuum. You can have an amazing product, but if the timing's not right, it's going to be an uphill battle.
100%. So Thiel lays out these 7 crucial questions, kind of like a gut check for anyone starting a business.
All right, hit us with them. Listen up, entrepreneurs. This is your homework assignment.
First one. Can you create breakthrough technology instead of incremental improvements? Remember, Thiel is all about those 10x leaps.
No small potatoes here.
Right. Second, is now the right time to start your particular business? Timing is everything. Third, are you starting with a big share of a small market? It's easier to dominate a niche than to boil the ocean. Fourth, do you have a great team? We've talked about that one. Fifth, do you have a way to not just create, but deliver your product? Distribution, distribution, distribution.
Got to get it into the hands of those customers.
Yeah. Exactly. Sixth, will your market position be defensible 10 and 20 years into the future? Are you playing the long game? And finally, have you identified a unique opportunity that others don't see? Are you on to one of those Thielian secrets?
Wow. Okay, so those are some tough questions. If you can answer yes to all of them, you might just be on to something really special.
No doubt. But even just wrestling with those questions, really evaluating your idea, honestly, that's where the real growth happens.
It's all about challenging your assumptions and making sure you're building something truly worthwhile. So as we wrap up this deep dive into 0 to 1, I have one last question for you, our amazing listeners. What's your 0 to 1 idea? What gets you fired up? What's that thing you're so passionate about that you'd be willing to pour your heart and soul into it, even if it takes years to see the payoff?
It doesn't have to be the next Google. It just has to be something that lights you up, something that makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning, ready to tackle whatever challenges come your way.
Because ultimately, that's what Thiel's message is all about. It's about embracing that spirit of possibility, challenging the status quo, and believing that we all have the power to create something new, something meaningful, something that leaves its mark on the world. So go out there, dream big, and make it happen. We'll be right here rooting for you.